In the chronicles of jazz, few figures burn as brightly or as defiantly as John Burke's Dizzy Gillespie. The puffed cheeks, the bent trumpet, and the contagious grin became trademarks, but they barely hint at the full force of his artistry and character. Behind the spectacle was a mind that never rested, a spirit unwilling to bow, and a sound that tore through limitations. Dizzy Gillespie entered the world on October 21, 1917, in Cheraw, South Carolina. The youngest of 9 children, he was born into a household guided by strong hands and disciplined tradition. His father, a local band leader, ruled the home with authority. While his methods could be harsh, his love for music planted early seeds in the boy's imagination. Life in Cheraw wasn't easy. The town moved slowly, entrenched in segregation and economic limits, but young Gillespie showed early signs of electric energy. He would bounce from porch to porch, listening for rhythms in passing cars, wind through trees, and the scratch of his father's records. After his father died when Dizzy was 10, the family struggled, but grief didn't suppress his curiosity. He started teaching himself the trombone at age 12, then switched to the trumpet, a decision that would forever change the world of music. Gillespie's education began in local public schools, but took shape more sharply through self-directed study and imitation. He listened obsessively to jazz records and mimicked the likes of Roy Eldridge, whose speed and fire captivated him. Eventually, he earned a scholarship to the Laurinburg Institute in North Carolina. There, his academic record was inconsistent, but his music flourished. Gillespie practiced for hours, often skipping classes. He once described himself as always in trouble, and that reputation would follow him, but so would his genius. He left school and made his way north, finally landing in Philadelphia. The city was alive with jazz, raw, brassy, improvisational. Gillespie soaked it up, bouncing between bands and jam sessions, absorbing every nuance of the horn. By the late 1930s, Gillespie had moved to Harlem, the cultural epicenter of Black America. His break came in 1937, when he joined Teddy Hill's band, replacing his idol, Roy Eldridge. Hill took the group on a tour of Europe, and Gillespie saw beyond America's boundaries for the first time. Back in the States, he played with giants, Cab Calloway, Ella Fitzgerald, and Lionel Hampton, but Gillespie didn't always play by the rules. His solos were unruly. He bent notes, scattered rhythms, and injected humor into every bar. Cab Calloway famously called him Dizzy because of his antics on and off stage. Tensions with Calloway escalated to a physical fight, and Gillespie was fired. It was a setback, but also a turning point. He began seeking musicians who shared his hunger for complexity. He found one in a saxophonist from Kansas City named Charlie Parker. Together, Gillespie and Parker tore through jazz norms. They stretched tempos, warped harmonies, and redefined phrasing. This approach, later dubbed bebop, baffled older musicians but thrilled the younger generation. Small clubs like Minton's Playhouse and Monroe's Uptown House became laboratories for their experiments. By the early 1940s, Gillespie was more than a player. He was a builder. He composed pieces like Salt Peanuts, Groovin' High, and A Night in Tunisia, each a puzzle of syncopation, modal scales, and abrupt shifts. They required discipline to play but carried an undeniable electricity. Unlike many in jazz, Gillespie knew the power of visibility. He leaned into performance, his cheeks ballooning, his horn bent upward from an accidental fall that became a permanent trademark, his eyes twinkling behind thick glasses. But for every joke, there was a measure of mastery. He wasn't content to be brilliant. He wanted to educate. Gillespie mentored musicians, explained theory to those willing to learn, and never withheld knowledge. His bands became training grounds for the next wave of talent. John Coltrane, Milt Jackson, Yusef Lateef, and many others found early opportunities under his wing. Gillespie's personal life offered both comfort and challenges. In 1940, he married Lorraine Willis, a dancer and behind-the-scenes manager who became his closest confidant. Their marriage endured for over 50 years, through tours, triumphs, and heartbreaks. Despite his reputation as a joker, Gillespie battled inner turmoil. The racial tensions he encountered while touring were constant. His popularity often outpaced financial security, and he bore the weight of expectations, especially after Charlie Parker's death in 1955, which shook him deeply. Parker's spiral into addiction left Gillespie grieving. He had fought to keep Parker focused, even while grappling with his own weariness. After Parker died at 34, Gillespie became more determined to push forward, not only as an artist, but as a bridge between old jazz and its unpredictable future. By the 1950s, Gillespie had evolved into more than a band leader. He embraced his role as an ambassador, both musically and culturally. In 1956, the U.S. State Department sent him on a world tour as a symbol of American creativity. Ironically, he was representing a nation that still denied civil rights to many of its citizens. Gillespie embraced the contradiction. In Iran, Yugoslavia, and Pakistan, he played before audiences who had never seen a jazz trumpet. He danced, laughed, and dazzled. He challenged stereotypes simply by being his full self, sophisticated, humorous, unapologetically black. These tours deepened his interest in global rhythms. He began integrating Afro-Cuban percussion and South American melodies into his music. Collaborations with Chano Pozo, Mongo Santamaria, and others added new fire to his recordings. Night in Tunisia, once a jazz club favorite, became a global anthem. Gillespie's 1947 big band, with its fiery Latin arrangements, broke molds. He proved that jazz could stretch its arms across borders, pulling in rhythms from the Caribbean, Africa, and the Middle East without losing its core. As the 1960s unfolded, jazz shifted again. Free jazz, soul jazz, and the rise of rock reconfigured public tastes. Gillespie didn't disappear. He adapted. He recorded with orchestras, wrote film scores, and even explored fusion with younger artists. His autobiography, To Be or Not to Bop, released in 1979, offered a candid and often hilarious account of his life. He wrote with honesty, reflecting on mistakes, near disasters, friendships, and near mystical moments of musical inspiration. He remained in demand on festival stages and in symphony halls. A beloved presence, he drew smiles even as his notes grew softer. Still, he could summon that old fire when needed. A late-career performance of Manteca, or Oop, Pop, a Da, would leave musicians stunned and audiences howling. He received numerous accolades, a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, a Kennedy Center honor, and recognition from presidents and prime ministers. But for all the praise, Gillespie never stopped reaching for one more chorus, one more idea. By the early 1990s, a shadow had begun to gather around Dizzy Gillespie, a slow, creeping storm he couldn't outplay. He had spent decades blazing through stages, defying gravity with every breath through his warped trumpet. But no amount of wit, wisdom, or rhythm could shield him from what came next. In 1992, doctors delivered the diagnosis: pancreatic cancer, aggressive, unrelenting, the kind of disease that doesn't negotiate. News spread quietly at first. Gillespie didn't want pity. He still cracked jokes in hospital rooms. He still practiced scales between treatments. Friends visiting him expected weakness, but found him humming riffs, eyes sharp, spirit defiant. "I've played my horn through fire," he once said. "Why stop now?" But behind closed doors, the fight grew harder. His once boundless energy began to flicker. The same hands that had held audiences spellbound now trembled slightly. Even so, he refused to leave the world with silence. In his final months, Gillespie performed seated, often with oxygen close by. his frame thinner, but his tone still clear. At one of his last shows, barely able to stand, he gripped his horn like a sword and unleashed one final solo, crooked, gritty, unbowed. A breathless hush followed, then thunderous applause. As the new year dawned in 1993, it became clear that the end was near. Musicians gathered at his bedside, students, friends, celebrities, street players. From Harlem to Havana, those who owed their sound to Gillespie kept vigil. On January 6, 1993, at the age of 75, he slipped away in his sleep at Englewood Hospital in New Jersey. No fanfare, no spotlight, just a quiet exit from a man who had long since earned his ovation. But when the news broke, it was as if a siren had gone silent. Clubs dimmed their lights. Radios played his songs on a loop. From smoky lounges to orchestral halls, the weight of his absence was immediate. Miles Davis had once said that Dizzy taught everyone how to play and how to live. His death was not just the closing of a chapter, it was the turning of a page no one wanted to write. Gillespie was buried at Flushing Cemetery in Queens. No monument could match what he left behind. His bent trumpet rests now in museums, but the real instrument, his fearless spirit, remains airborne, passed from one breath to the next.